What is up, guys? Welcome back to the Keep It Hoop podcast. This is our first episode in a couple weeks. I did one when the playoffs first started, and I went over first round predictions and tried to predict what would happen in the playoffs. But in all honesty, I was pretty wrong. That's one of the reasons why I haven't really done a podcast in a while. I've done a few videos. If you haven't seen those yet, go check that out on our YouTube page. But I mean, I've literally just been enjoying the playoffs. The first round was a bit hectic and stressful for me as a Knicks fan. That Hawks series didn't go well, but still, a successful season for my Knicks. So all in all, it is what it is. But other than that, you had the Bucks Nets series, which is a classic. The Sixers Hawks one, which everybody was surprised about. I don't think anybody really had the Hawks get into the conference finals. And then you had, Clippers and Mavs had some exciting games. You had Blazers Nuggets, and then kind of all the fallout and everything that could happen going forward after that series. Suns Lakers, obviously a lot of injuries. Not in just that series, but overall in the playoffs so far, right? Which is one of the reasons why I think we are left with the teams that we have now, and it's been pretty unpredictable. Nuggets Suns, not as exciting, but Clippers Jazz, has some back and forth. Jazz, pretty disappointing, I will say. I'll get into a bit more detail of a lot of these series. Not too much, but at least in terms of breaking down my thoughts on them going forward. And then, so again, a lot of why I haven't been doing it is, again, I've been a bit busy, but I've also just been really enjoying the playoffs. And as disappointed and as annoying and sad as I was to see the Knicks fall out of the playoffs, the one positive, right, if I want to look at the brighter side, is that I just get to watch the NBA playoffs stress-free and really just enjoy each game. Something I'm used to because the Knicks almost never make the playoffs. So I'm kind of right where I feel at home. But yeah, let's get started with the Eastern Conference. So again, when I did my last podcast, it was still in the middle of the first round, right? So I'm just gonna go out and go down the list, and we can talk about briefly each series. So Sixers Wizards wasn't much of a series. Embiid hurting his knee definitely hurt them going forward, but that's not the reason why they lost the Hawks series, right? So I'll get into that after. Knicks Hawks, I've talked about, whether it was social media or maybe in my videos about why the Knicks lost. A lot of it, I think, did just come down to, Randall not showing up as much as he needed to. It's not like he didn't try, but he got a lot of the shots he got during the regular season. They just didn't drop. It's unfortunate. The Hawks were able to really load up on him and make things tougher for him. And I think once he started to struggle, he got in his own head. And it was kind of a never-ending cycle, right? Because he would get in his own head. He wasn't playing as decisive, which made the Hawks' job of loading up and stopping him even easier, which meant he was going to miss more shots, and it just kept going. The few times he did have success, it was at end of shot clock, end of quarters, and he just didn't think and he went. But a lot of that also had to do with the Knicks roster, right? Elfrid Payton started game 1 and 2, and he didn't really play after that because Thibodeau finally listened and sat him. But I think it was a little bit too late for that. Game 1 was a really crucial game. Went down to the wire. In New York, it was a game that the Knicks should have and could have had. Big play down the stretch. RJ Barrett misses a steal. Bogdanovich gets it, hits a corner 3, and then we all saw Trae Young with that floater to win the game, something he's done over and over now. But what a lot of people don't remember is the fact that, Elfrid Payton played, I think, like 12, 16 minutes, somewhere in that range in that game. And that's, a lot of times, just kind of the fact of when Elfrid Payton plays, you're losing those minutes. Those are minutes you're losing. And, who knows, right? Who knows if Payton didn't play, what could have happened in that game and then going forward in that series. But the problem with, right, when you start Rose, then you start to have, the ripple effect where your bench doesn't have as much scoring or playmaking. Emmanuel Quickley, as good as he is, as big a fan as I am of him, Still a rookie, and you saw some of his weaknesses and inexperience coming through. Um, but credit to the Hawks. Like I said, they played a really good series. They had guys step up. Trae Young just dominated the Knicks. Took whatever he got, right. If the defense was sagging off, he was going to shoot the three, go up for that floater. If they played him up, either kicking it out to guys like Bogdanovich, Huerter, or Gallinari, or he got the lob to Capella, or even a Kongwu, or even John Collins, right? So really good for them. I've been really impressed even after that series. Knicks obviously need another playmaker, another scorer, guys that can go out and get their own shots. Who knows what happens with Derrick Rose in the offseason. RJ Barrett, obviously, he's a big part of this franchise. He's going to need to take another step going forward for the Knicks to really ultimately be taking that next step. There's obviously a lot of rumors about what the Knicks are going to do. They have a lot of cap space. They have some, really good draft picks. I think 19, 21. So definitely things that the Knicks can do this offseason. And guys like Lonzo, Kyle Lowry, Dennis Schroeder, John Wall, even a lot of guys linked to the Knicks. And I think just part of that is just the nature of the Knicks and their location. And now that they're finally competitive and with cap space, there's a lot of opportunities and what ifs, but who knows? But this is a very exciting offseason, very important one though, right? Because these can be the off seasons where you look back if the Knicks end up winning a championship or just bottoming out, like just not being able to really do much with this. This could be one of those off seasons where you look back at and say, one, why didn't we do, moves XYZ? Or you look back if the Knicks do well and you say, wow, that off season is what turned the Knicks from a good, solid team to a great team. So exciting, but kind of anxious, not gonna lie. But yeah, props to the Hawks. Bucks, Heat in that first round wasn't even close. The Heat just weren't themselves all year. A lot of turnovers. Their defense was a bit sloppy, and their offense was just it just wasn't it. I think teams started to figure out how important Duncan Robinson was and just different ways to try to neutralize them a bit. Tyler Hero just didn't show up. All the jokes about how the Heat weren't willing to get rid of Tyler Hero to get James Harden. I still think he's a solid player. He has high potential, but I think their expectations of him going forward were, they came back down to reality a little bit. People were making crazy comparisons. And again, I still think he's going to be a really solid player, but, he still has a lot of things to work on. And I think you saw that in that series. Nets Celtics, once Jaylen Brown went out, not much the Celtics could do. I think we all expected that series to go exactly how it went. Jason Tatum, though, continuing to show just how good of a player he is. Single-handedly won a game in that series, going out for 50, dueling with KD. And, star in the making, right? So then we'll go to the let's just do the first round of the Western Conference. Jazz, Grizzlies, not much there. Donovan Mitchell sat out the first game, came back. Wasn't even really a series after that. John Morant, he tried, with his leadership and effort, driving ability and passing. But, that Grizzlies team, they're AC for a reason, right? They're just still lacking that second guy. Dylan Brooks is solid, but they just need another guy who can go out and get his own whenever. And I don't think that Dylan Brooks is that. I think he's improved a lot. He's overperformed, but how much better does he get? We'll see. Clippers, Mavs. We know now that Carlisle's out and how Luka and some of the players didn't necessarily get along with him, which was surprising because it seemed everything seemed fine and dandy on the outside, but that's why you can never really understand what's going on inside a locker room. There's just so many question marks and so many things that go on inside a team during a long season like this. Their priority number one is to keep Luka happy. So if there was anything that Luka felt, you just make sure that he stays happy. And as much as, I'm sure Cuban and the Mavs organization and the fans love and appreciate Rick Carlisle and everything he's done, and, especially with that one championship they had, Luka's the future, right? And you have to do everything to keep him happy. Tim Hardaway, Jalen Brunson, they had some solid games, but that Mavs team still needs a number two because Kristaps isn't it, man. And maybe I'm a bit biased being a Knicks fan and the history behind him and the Knicks, but I don't know. He just doesn't. He settles for threes a lot, even though he's not a great shooter. Doesn't use his size, not a great rebounder. isn't a great defender anymore. So, I don't think he can be that number two guy. There's the rumors about him being unhappy with the attention that Luka gets, which is, I think, reasonable, right? Kristaps was a highly touted guy, came into the league with the Knicks his first couple of years. And even that year when he tore his ACL, he started that year almost in the MVP conversation. Like, he was playing really well. So he knows what the bright, lights feels like. And he's kind of been an afterthought in Dallas. Offenses run through Luka. And also, that part is also justified as well. Luka's one of the best players in the world, generational talent. So, egos can get in the way. We don't even know if the rumors are true. But if they are, look, it's difficult, right? It's not an easy situation for Porzingis to be in. But, I also don't blame the Mavs for playing the way they did. That being said, again, they definitely need another guy because we saw with guys like, Harden and LeBron when he had some of those, really bad teams. It's so hard to win like this, right? So they need someone else, get Luka's usage rate down, have him play a bit more efficiently, spread the volume. And I think, Dallas is still obviously in a good position going forward. You have the Nuggets Blazers. Look, I think they have to blow it up, right? And you saw Dame's, I think he had his social media post after the game, which was like, how much longer do I hold out? And Dame is super loyal. And that's one of his, one of the characteristics that, people are drawn to. But it's also, I think to a fault because in today's NBA, with social media and just the way the media portrays things, a lot of players' legacies and careers are judged based on championships. And Dame isn't going to win here. We've seen it now, right? Like, as much as I love him and CJ McCollum individually and together, I think they're both really good players. They're fun to watch, seem like great guys. They just aren't going to win, though. If they can't beat the Nuggets when they don't have Jamal Murray, you're definitely not winning the ring, right? So they got to blow it up, I think, change some things up. But I don't know. Like, if they can hold on to Dame and get something for CJ, then they don't need to blow it up because Dame always just automatically gives you a chance to do something special. But if they're going to trade Dame, then you just blow it up because CJ plus whatever you can get from Dame isn't going to make you any better, I don't think. So, a lot of times in these trades involving superstars, you never get full value as a player immediately, right? Like, maybe you end up getting a pick that ends up being, a generational talent. But in terms of just player for player in the moment, you pretty much never get equal value. So if they're going to trade Dame, I think they might as well just blow it up. We'll see, though. We'll see what they do. New coach coming in. Probably they're going to try to run it back one more time. I think a lot of these times with situations like this, the number one scenario is you trade the coach, see if a new coach can, with his new strategies, new voice in the locker room, that they can, work some magic. And then you have a year or two of that, and then you go for the blow-up. But, Dame and CJ aren't young per se, so, they are on somewhat of a timeline, right? So, we'll see. That's another team to really keep an eye on during the offseason. Lakers, Suns, right? The AD injury kind of, the Suns already looked good, right? Chris Paul was starting to get healthier throughout the series. But as soon as AD went down, it just looked rough for LeBron and the Lakers. They do get a whole offseason, though, a longer one than some of the other teams. So we'll see, if they can get rested up and kind of retool for next season. I do think they need to change their team up a little bit. Schroeder seems to be out. Kuzma's rumored to be out. There's rumors of them trying to get guys like Carmelo Anthony, a couple of guys here and there. So, we'll definitely see. I think there's a couple moves to be made. Caruso, he's been involved in some rumors. So we'll see. But, Suns obviously still playing right now, in large part due to the fact that they just dismantled the Nuggets. DeAndre Ayton did a really, really, really good job on Jokic. Jokic himself said that Ayton's one of his toughest opponents, the guy that defends him really well. Jokic just tried to do everything, and it just wasn't enough. But, it wasn't his fault, right? The MVP got announced, and rightly so. But they need Jamal Murray. They need MPJ to take that next step. It was unfortunate because they looked really, really, really good after they got Aaron Gordon. But hopefully Jamal Murray can come back next year, and again, if healthy, this team is still super dangerous, super dangerous. But the thing is, with like this would have been a great year because like Denver, I think would have been the favorites this year if you just swapped them with Phoenix. Like if everything else stayed the same, right? If the Lakers went through the injuries and they didn't make it, if the Bucks beat the Nets, and if it was just Nuggets Clippers with Kawhi being injured and and then the Hawks being the other team, Denver, and this is not to say that it's easy now, but like this would have been such a great opportunity with their team to win it and still be competitive next year because again they were so good when they made that trade and MPJ is only gonna get better and Jokic if I don't know how much better he can get but should continue to improve if not stay the same, which is still very good obviously. But yeah, so very unfortunate year for Denver. You definitely, if you're a Denver fan or you're in the front office organization, you have to be watching the playoffs with your, head in your hand and just saying what if. So it's really unfortunate. Again, we've talked about the injuries, right? Chris Paul, AD, DeAndre Hunter, James Harden, and Kyrie, Jaylen Brown right before the playoffs. You have Jamal Murray right before the playoffs. Mike Conley missed a ton of time. So it's unfortunate, right? DiVincenzo right before the playoffs. So a lot of injuries, and you never like to see it in the regular season either, but when it's in the playoffs, it's really rough. But and then Kawhi, right? So Kawhi obviously injured, seems to be out indefinitely. Paul George, really did close out the Jazz series pretty well. Obviously Terrence Mann had the game of his life in that closing game. So it's not like he didn't have any help. Reggie Jackson is showing up big time. Osiris has been on our show and before we're talking about how who would have thought that Reggie Jackson would be the more useful, more or just a better player in the playoffs than Russell Westbrook, because they had that beef going back to OKC when Reggie Jackson didn't think he should be benched or I guess a backup for Russ and all that, right? And it's funny because now you have a series where the two starting point guards are Russell Westbrook's former backups. You have Reggie Jackson versus Cameron Payne, right? At least until Chris Paul comes back, which is funny. But Paul George last night missed the 2 free throws. Man, like I don't know, man. He's such a talented player, but he's overachieved compared to like his draft predictions and everything. But if you just look at the overall body of work and the talent he has with the size and athleticism and the shooting ability and the dribbling ability and the defense, he's just somehow has underperformed, which is an underachieve, which is crazy because again, overall very good player, very a lot of accolades, but he should be better. He should be, and just the moments he collapses are big collapses. It's not like he struggles a little bit from the free throw line or field goal, shoots 40%, but he has really bad moments, hitting the back, hitting the side of the backboard, missing 2 free throws last night. And look, I get it. That call with DeAndre Ayton over the rim is, questionable. Like I personally wouldn't have called it in that moment. If it was earlier in the game, I probably would have. But if you're a Clippers fan, like, yeah, you can complain about that, but you guys got awarded those free throws after that deflection with the Pat Bev call, I think was kind of crazy, because almost all deflections are like that. So like I didn't really understand that. And then you can't really, if Paul George makes those free throws, then that's it, right? Like you just got to take care of business. So you can blame the refs, you can blame whoever you want, but at the end of the day, like the Clippers, the players, the coaches, the fans, like, you just gotta, I think, look yourself in the mirror and just or look at your team and just because that game was winnable. Devin Booker doesn't shoot great, and granted, Cameron Payne and DeAndre Ayton played really well. With no CP3 and Booker shooting poorly, especially in the beginning of the game, you have to win that game, and to lose off of 2 missed free throws from your best player, that's rough, right? You go over to the East. We'll talk about the second round games or the series. The Sixers-Hawks one. Man, Ben Simmons, where do we start? Because I know there's a lot of jokes, a lot of memes. I've posted some of them on our Instagram and Twitter pages as well. But, Man, I don't know. Like I am assuming, hopefully, right, like that he's not like he's still working on his free throws in the offseason. I doubt he goes into the offseason thinking that he doesn't need to. Like it's been a weakness of his throughout his whole career. But there's also rumors that he's very stubborn about the people he works with. He often works with people in his family that are really close with him that sometimes baby and coddle him. Apparently, Rich Paul set up a lot of workouts with really high level elite shooting coaches and just coaches in general. And he said he didn't want to work with people that weren't in his circle. Um, if a guy like LeBron or KD said this, it's like, all right, man, like you choose who you work with, you do you. But like Ben, you're an all-star, but you're by no means a superstar. You have glaring holes and weaknesses in your game. Who are you to be picky about who you work with? Like at this point, bring it all. Like whoever you got, let me work with because you obviously, it's not working. Whatever you're doing in the offseason, it's not working. Yes, you've gotten better at certain things, but your biggest weakness is still glaring. It is a weakness that has cost your team games in the regular season and now a whole playoff series against a team that you guys were supposed to beat pretty easily. And it's just disappointing to see a player who's always talking about how great he is defensively. And I agree with that. He's a great defender. I've said it on this podcast and in our videos before. I respect him greatly for his defense, rebounding, and passing. But I don't care if those things are great if you are just non-existent at one aspect of the game, like just non-existent, right? And it's fine to be that way if you're, let's say, a guy like Steve Novak or, a specialist, right? And it's not like Steve Novak was out there talking trash on NBA, the Jump or NBA on TNT, talking about how good he is and how he doesn't care about what people think about him. So that's fine. But if you're going to go out and talk that talk, then you have to realize that people are going to come at you when you play like the way he did. I just don't understand how you can be so picky and stubborn about the people you work with when you're, Embiid is working his ass off and he's getting better every year and he's putting up MVP numbers and playing through injuries. And you're out here, sitting back and you say, all right, I don't want to work with this guy because I don't really know him. He might not let me do some of the things I like to do. Forget that, man. Like, you are obviously a very talented player in a situation where you have a legitimate chance to win the championship. But the biggest hole on your team is your lack of ability to shoot or even attempt shots. I don't even care if you take shots or make shots at a high rate, right? Like Giannis isn't a great jump shooter, but teams can't just ignore him for times of the game because he still at least attacks. He looks for he looks to score. And with Ben, you get a move, you see Trae Young of all people under the rim, and you pass it to Thibault, who gets blocked. Now, granted, if Thibault makes that shot, it's whatever. But like, why are you a 6'9" guy who is refusing to dunk the basketball on a 6 foot guy who isn't even going to jump with you? Like, it just makes no sense. These reports about him being coddled kind of make sense. And I think at this point, like if you're Embiid, you got to be sick, right? I think it was bad enough before when you're putting up these numbers, you're playing through injuries and you're playing well, and Ben's playing the way he is and he's refusing to shoot. And I think he's been pretty mature about this whole thing overall, having Ben's back. But if you see these reports and you lose the way you did against the Hawks of all teams, again, no disrespect to the Hawks, but the Sixers were supposed to win the series, or at least predicted to. And if you're Joel Embiid, you consider all those things, and then you take these reports into consideration, and then it's like, man, like I don't want to play with this guy anymore. I really don't. If I'm Embiid. So, look, part of it's also the other guys, right? Like Embiid played really badly, especially in the fourth in some of those games. Tobias Harris was AWOL for a game after asking why he wasn't a part of the Big Three during the regular season. And Doc Rivers continues to stubbornly stick with his guys, and refuse to make adjustments or make them very late, which is probably why, I don't think it's a coincidence at this point, why he has been a part of some of the biggest playoff collapses in recent history. Blown leads in games, blown leads in series, not a good look. If you're the Sixers, I don't know. You might just have to like I don't know, because obviously they signed him to a decent contract, but Not a good look for Doc. Not a good look for Ben, and not a good look for Tobias. Again, Joel didn't play great in some of those fourth quarters, but as a fan, I feel bad for Joel. I feel bad for Seth Curry, who balled in those last couple games. And I think for the Sixers, you really do have to consider trading Ben Simmons. There's a few trades out there. Maybe you get someone like Zach LaVine involved. Maybe you can do one for D'Lo and Malik Beasley. Beasley can come off the bench. You have D'Lo, a guy who can actually spread the floor and will actually look to score the ball. Right? You do lose some defense, but you bring on Thibault. You give him a bigger role. Maybe things will work out. Because I think, look, at this point, what Ben Simmons gives you, again, still a great defender and rebounder for his position, but very, very replaceable at this point. The only problem is Ben Simmons' stock is at an all-time low, right? So, it's going to be tough if you're Philadelphia to get full value for him, especially compared to like what he was producing or what his value was early on this season, points at points in the past. But I don't know. Like if I'm Philadelphia, I don't really want him anymore, to be honest. Like that was just such an embarrassing performance. Because again, if you have bad shooting nights, you're off or whatever, those things are fixable. You can get better, but mentality is such an important thing that a lot of times is so hard to change. Like, you kind of just are who you are. And if this guy's refusing to work out with the best coaches, if he's, again, these are reports, right? I just want to preface that because I have nothing confirmed, obviously. I'm just going off of what I've heard in the news as reports. But if those things are true, and he's refusing to work out with some of the best coaches, he wants to be coddled by his inner circle, and his mentality is, I don't want to score, I don't want to work on my game, I don't want to be a threat to score the ball consistently, and I don't care what people have to say. I'm going to play my way and do so with my defense, rebound, and passing, which are all important things. But at the end of the day, your team needs you to do a certain thing, and you don't care what your so-called haters say, but you're also at the same time not really caring about what your team needs you to do. And I think, again, part of that's also coaching. I think Doc Rivers, Brett Brown kind of allowed him to be who he wants to be, which isn't what the team needs him to be, which I think is a big key. But if this is who he is, then I'm trading him. I don't want him. I don't want him on my team. I don't want him anywhere near my team. That being said, we'll go over to the Milwaukee Brooklyn series. Very, 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 very entertaining series. I think I went into that series saying whoever wins that series is going to win the NBA Finals, especially knowing that, the Lakers were out. Clippers had lost Kawhi. In Philadelphia, obviously. I mean, I didn't think they were going to be either of those teams. But, the one thing that was going to derail the Nets season was health, right? Because if this team is healthy, there's not a single team in the NBA that was going to beat them. I don't care if the Lakers are fully healthy. If KD, and we all saw what KD did and how good he is, if KD's healthy, James Harden's healthy, and Kyrie's healthy, they're winning it. Because they almost beat the Bucks with 1.5 stars, right? Even 1.25. James Harden wasn't himself. And Kyrie played, 1 or 2 games, right? So, props to Milwaukee. They played great when they needed to. It wasn't always pretty. Giannis was pretty dominant. I will say Chris Middleton proved me wrong and was better than I would expect him to be. Has some really, really, really good games. As a whole postseason, he's had a pretty good run. I still think that people calling him underrated or underpaid is still dumb. I wouldn't pay him the max on my team. I don't think that he can be the number one guy on a contending team. That being said, I'm a fan of Chris Middleton. I think he played solid. He needed to do what he needed to do for the most part. Came through with that big fadeaway, fall away in the overtime of Game 7. But this series is, I think, as crazy as it is, although Brooklyn lost, more so about Kevin Durant than anyone else in that series. I'm happy Milwaukee won. I think they have a very good shot to win it all now. I hope they do. I'm rooting for Giannis. But KD is that guy, man. And look, I'm a Knicks fan. I hate the Nets. I don't like the Nets fans. I don't want the Nets to win. But what KD showed in back-to-back games, really in 3 straight games, barely sat and just dominated, man. Like, just showed, his whole array of abilities, ability to defend, rebound, play make, drive, score in the mid-range, score in the 3, clutch shots, free throws. It was just he put on a clinic and he showed why people think he's the best player in the world. And look, I get LeBron's not here, and we can't forget about him. And guys like Kawhi and Giannis are always gonna have an argument, but I don't think you can. I personally don't know if you can argue KD being the best player in the world right now. I mean, he's just so gifted, so talented. His will, determination, played both sides of the ball. He wasn't elite defensively, but did what he could, rebounded, passed. I mean, I was in awe. Again, I wasn't rooting for the Nets. I didn't want them to win, but it seemed like whenever he had the ball in his hands, good things were happening. And more often than not, he put up a shot, and I just expected it was going to go in. And it was historic. It was special to see. Again, really, really unfortunate what happened with Harden and Kyrie. You obviously want teams, whatever happens in the playoffs in any sport in any season, you want the outcome to be because a team is outright better. And I'm not saying that the Bucks aren't better, but it's a little difficult to say that if the Nets were healthy that they wouldn't have swept the floor. I mean, like not swept the series, but just blown them out, because the Bucks barely won against 1.25 stars, right? If they had 3, I don't know. That series probably ends in 5 games. I'm giving Milwaukee and Giannis 1 game, but that series probably isn't close if they're healthy. And the playoffs are supposed to be about finding out who the best team is, and it's hard to do that with so many injuries. Now, I think some of it is a bit of a fluke, but I don't think it's 100% coincidental that these injuries are coinciding with one of the shortest NBA off seasons ever. As a fan, I was excited when the NBA came back so quickly, but you start to see why the players were concerned, and I don't think it's a coincidence, but here we are. Going forward, predictions, now that we've kind of gone over all the series. Actually, we haven't gone over the Clippers Jazz one fully, right? My quick thoughts on that. Rudy Gobert, I think, again, because this has happened in the past, while he's a great regular season defender, there are ways you can attack him. You go small, you make him play drop coverage. You can really take advantage of the fact that he's not very mobile, very good rim protector, but he's not a Bam type player where he can switch out. And I think the Clippers did a good job of attacking him. You saw Donovan Mitchell's face when he realized, that they were eliminated, and that they were going to lose Game 6. For them to go up in that series 2-0 and not be able to, finish it out after the season they had. Again, I get Conley was out, but it's tough, man. It's tough. You lose to a team that loses Kawhi, and you lose to Terrence Mann, of all people, in Game 6. No offense to Terrence Mann, but if you're the Jazz, you're the number 1 team in the regular season. That's a series, and those are games you're supposed to win. And maybe something has to change, right? I don't know. I don't know what it is, though, because I think Quinn Snyder's a very good coach. He has a pulse on that locker room. They seem to love to play for him. Has a very, set style that they excel at, but this is what, because I've said this in the podcast episodes, leading up to the playoffs and just throughout the regular season, some of my videos. I was wrong about Phoenix, because I thought Phoenix might have been the same, but especially about Utah. I thought that Utah was just more of a regular season team, and I actually didn't think that they'd even make the conference finals either. I didn't think that they were a team that would really threaten the top teams, the Clippers, the Lakers, the Nuggets, if they were healthy. I just didn't. I didn't think that they'd be able to, right? And they showed again that they weren't able to, and I don't know. A lot of times the blame does fall on your best player, but I don't think that. Well, first of all, people argue that Rudy Gobert is their best player, or at least most important, and I do think that he, again, they're always to exploit him. I don't know if you can blame too much on Donovan Mitchell. I know he's, not the greatest defender, but in terms of just doing his job, I mean, he torched the Clippers, and they just weren't able to get it done. So I don't know. I think changes need to be made, because I think currently constructed with this roster, I don't know how much more you can get out of this team if you're the front office or Coach Snyder, right? So I guess that's another team you keep an eye on going forward in the offseason. So you have the Clippers, Suns, and then Bucks, Hawks, I think Game 1 tonight. But the Suns up 2-0 now. Should be 1-1. Again, Paul George and the Clippers blew it. Should be 1-1. But, as the old adage and cliche goes, Suns just took care of what they were supposed to do, took care of home court advantage. We'll see what the Clippers can do once they're back in Los Angeles. This is not a new thing for them, not a new territory. They've gone down 2-0 in series plenty of times already in these playoffs. We're just gone down in general. So we'll see how they respond this time without Kawhi, right? That's the big key. Very impressed with Devin Booker. I think his ability to really attack the mid-range. He's very patient. I think he learned a lot from Chris Paul and how to manipulate the defense and really use that snake dribble to get to his spots in that pick-and-roll game with Ayton. Man, DeAndre Ayton, like Devin Booker was already one of my favorite players in the league, but DeAndre Ayton is like just climbing up that list so fast right now. His willingness to just rim run and seal people out and just be a big, it's something that we haven't, we don't always see. Is he more talented than guys like AD? No, but I definitely know Lakers fans. I know specific Lakers fans, and I know they're not the only ones that wish AD would play like this. Use your size, use your strength, rim run, be big, get physical, and Ayton's doing that. And Ayton's done that in the Lakers series, did that in the Nuggets series, and he's doing it here now. A great rebounder, underrated defender, led the league in multiple categories in terms of shots contested, threes, jump shots, total in the paint. I'm a huge fan of DeAndre Ayton, and he's looking at a lot of money coming up now with the way he's played, especially in these playoffs. Very happy for him, very impressed. I had the Clippers winning it if Kawhi was going to come back with those question marks. With what we've seen, I think the Suns win this. I still do think it's going to go 6. I think the Clippers win both games at home. But yeah, I mean, we'll see. Hawks, Bucks. I don't know who guards Giannis. I guess it's going to start out with Capella, but that's kind of tough for him. I don't know. I have Bucks winning in 6. I do think that, their offense is still ugly at times. And Drew Holiday was a bit inconsistent and shaky in that Nets series. And I have a lot of trust in Trae Young. I think he's just played really well. I think him and Bogdanovich has kind of a sore knee, so we'll see how that goes. They obviously miss Hunter, but Huerter showed up big time in Game 7. Capella's been pretty good. Okongwu gives them solid minutes, so I think they'll steal a game here, here and there, especially with their shooting and how they can get hot. And Trae really just has the ability to really carry a team. Now, it will be difficult, right? Because, I mean, like Drew Holiday's a great defender, but we saw what Trae did with Thibault and Ben Simmons guarding him. So I don't think he'll have too much of a problem. Maybe Drew brings something out, something different, so a different look that Trae struggles with a little bit. But I do think Trae himself can win them a game or two. So I have them, or I have the Bucks still going on in 6, which would mean Bucks Suns in the finals, and then I have Bucks winning. Even if Chris Paul comes back, I think Bucks win in 6. If Chris Paul doesn't come back, I have Bucks winning in 5. But yeah, I mean that's it for now. Again, first episode in a while, so I had to kind of go down all the series somewhat quickly, but it's nice having a playoffs where it's not very predictable and it's teams we haven't really seen in this position, right? So I'm definitely excited going forward. Please check out our social media pages. We're on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, also YouTube. Upload at least one video a week, if not more. No videos this week though, actually, but we'll have more coming out next week. Breaking down players, teams, all that. So stay tuned. And if you're watching videos on YouTube, please remember to like, subscribe, share, and comment. This podcast will be up on YouTube as well. Also Spotify, Apple Podcasts, so whatever platform you use, check it out. And we'll see you guys soon. Thanks.